The research station Axiom-9 hung like a crystalline spider web against the obsidian backdrop of deep space, its external lights casting an ethereal blue glow that did little to mask the tension brewing within its transparent corridors. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood before the Galactic Confederation's Xeno-Psychological Review Board, her presentation hologram flickering with images that defied every known biological understanding. "Ladies, gentlemen, and non-binary entities of the Confederation," she began, her voice steady despite the magnitude of her discovery. "What I'm about to show you will fundamentally challenge everything we understand about consciousness, stress response, and survival." The assembled representatives from a dozen different species leaned forward. The Karnox representatives' 7 eye stalks trembled with anticipation, while the silicon-based lithoid delegate's crystalline surface refracted the holographic display with an almost audible hum of confusion. Elena's first slide showed a human soldier, Private Marcus Chen, seemingly dead to the world. He was curled up in what appeared to be a standard-issue sleep pod, his breathing deep and regular. But the context was anything but normal. Behind him, through the viewport, a massive solar flare erupted, a cosmic explosion that would have reduced most biological entities to atomic dust in milliseconds. "Pay attention to the neural mapping," she instructed, zooming in on a complex holographic brain scan. Where any other species would show complete neural shutdown or catastrophic stress response, Chen's brain was a symphony of activity. Different regions communicated with impossible speed and complexity. It was as if he wasn't just surviving the extreme environment, he was processing it, analyzing it, potentially even weaponizing it. The Artulian diplomat, a gaseous entity contained within a sophisticated environmental suit, shifted uncomfortably. "This defies every known biological protocol," it whispered through its translation matrix. Elena allowed herself a small smile. "Precisely. What you're witnessing is not a malfunction. It's an adaptation so advanced, it appears like a weakness to the untrained eye." She clicked to the next image, a series of stress tests conducted on human subjects. In scenario after scenario, humans displayed an extraordinary ability. The more extreme the external threat, the deeper their apparent sleep state became. Volcanic eruptions, sonic bombardments, extreme gravitational shifts. Each test showed humans not just surviving, but seemingly thriving in unconsciousness. "Our preliminary research suggests that human sleep is not a vulnerability," Elena continued, her voice gaining passion. "It's a sophisticated neural optimization system. When most species would be paralyzed by fear, humans enter a distributed cognitive state that allows for simultaneous threat assessment, strategic planning, and physiological preservation." The board was silent. The implications were staggering. A holographic replay began to play. It showed a human research team aboard a station during an unexpected meteor storm. While alien crew members ran in panic, screaming and activating emergency protocols, the humans simply slept. Their sleep pods became living defense systems, neural networks adapting to the external threat with a precision that bordered on the supernatural. "We're looking at a species that doesn't just adapt to danger," Elena concluded, her final slide showing a sleeping human surrounded by complex neural network visualizations. "We're looking at a species that transforms danger into an opportunity for survival." The Karnox representatives' eye stalks nodded in what could only be described as a mixture of terror and respect. The lithoid delegate's crystalline surface began to fracture, a sign of profound emotional response for its species. Outside the presentation chamber, the infinite darkness of space continued its silent, indifferent watch. Somewhere out there, humans were sleeping. And in that sleep, they were more aware, more dangerous, and more alive than any other species could comprehend. The presentation was over. The real story was just beginning. The research wing of Axiom-9 looked like a surgical nightmare crossed with a fever dream. Holographic displays flickered with impossible datasets, tracking the most recent batch of human test subjects through scenarios that would have liquefied the neural networks of any other known species. Dr. Kelix, The lead alien researcher clutched her tentacle-like appendages in mounting frustration. Her species, the Ventari, prided themselves on scientific precision and emotional control. But these humans were systematically destroying everything she understood about biological response. "Initiate Scenario Omega," she commanded, her voice a precise electronic chirp. The testing chamber transformed. Massive plasma generators created a simulated environment that mimicked the interior of an active volcano. Temperatures spiked to 1,200 degrees Celsius. Radiation levels would have sterilized entire planetary ecosystems. Sonic waves capable of shattering molecular bonds reverberated through the chamber. 3 human test subjects lay peacefully in their specialized sleep pods. Private Marcus Chen, the same soldier from Elena Rodriguez's presentation, didn't just survive. He began to snore. Dr. Calix's assistants, a mixed crew of 6 different alien species, watched in horrified fascination. The Korlath monitoring specialist, a crystalline being whose entire existence was based on mathematical precision, began to emit high-pitched sounds that translated to pure existential panic. "Impossible," the Korlath repeated, its crystal lattice vibrating with each word. "Biologically impossible." But the data told a different story. Chen's neural networks were doing more than surviving. They were analyzing, processing, adapting. Each millisecond of extreme environmental stress was being converted into actionable intelligence. His brain wasn't just a survival mechanism. It was a living, breathing tactical computer. The other 2 subjects, Lieutenant Sarah Rodriguez and Specialist David Kim, displayed similar responses. Their brain activity charts looked less like medical readings and more like complex war strategies mapped across living neural landscapes. "We're detecting multiple simultaneous cognitive processes," the lab's primary AI announced. Its voice carried a note that might have been described as awe if it were capable of emotion. "Subject is processing external stimuli, developing predictive models, and maintaining optimal physiological homeostasis, all while appearing to be in deep sleep." Dr. Calix zoomed in on Chen's neural scan. What looked like random neural firing was actually a sophisticated distributed computing system. Different regions of the brain were communicating faster than light-speed communication protocols. They were sharing information, making decisions, creating contingency plans, all while the subject appeared to be completely unconscious. A sudden alarm interrupted their observations. The test chamber's environmental controls began to destabilize. Most research teams would have panicked. But the sleeping humans didn't move a muscle. Instead, micro-adjustments began happening. Nanotechnological interfaces within their sleep pods started compensating for the increasing environmental chaos. It was as if the humans and their technology were a single living organism. "They're not just surviving," whispered one of the Ventari research assistants. "They're optimizing." The implications were terrifying. If humans could turn extreme environmental stress into a strategic advantage, what did that mean for every other species in the galaxy? What evolutionary trick had humanity developed that made them seem so impossibly calm in the face of certain destruction? As the test chamber reached critical levels that would have instantly killed any other known life form, the 3 human test subjects continued to sleep, their breath steady, their neural networks dancing with an intelligence that defied comprehension. Dr. Calix realized something profound in that moment. Humans weren't just another species. They were something else entirely. The living, breathing adaptation that turned the very concept of survival into an art form. And they were just getting started. The Kralax warship emerged from subspace like a nightmare-given metallic form. Its hull was a jagged construct of obsidian-like material, bristling with weapons that could reduce entire planetary systems to cosmic dust. Commander Zarek, a being whose entire evolutionary path was defined by aggressive territorial expansion, believed this would be another simple conquest. Axiom 9 research station appeared defenseless. Most of its human personnel seemed to be asleep. "Initiate total destruction sequence," Zarek commanded, mandibles clicking with anticipation of easy victory. But something was wrong. The first plasma torpedo, capable of vaporizing a small moon, approached the station. Standard protocols would demand emergency maneuvers, shields, desperate communication. Instead, absolute silence greeted the incoming destruction. Inside the station, the sleeping humans didn't even twitch. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, who had been monitoring the entire scenario, watched with clinical precision. Her neural link to the station's systems gave her a unique perspective that no other species could comprehend. The torpedo was 3 seconds from impact. 2 seconds. 1 second. Nothing happened. The weapon simply redirected, as if the very fabric of space had been subtly manipulated by an intelligence so profound it appeared like passive resistance. Zarek's tactical display went haywire. Impossible calculations began streaming across his command screens. The humans weren't just defending, they were transforming the very physics of the encounter. Status report. He screamed to his bridge crew. The primary tactical officer, a cybernetic entity designed for instantaneous threat assessment, could only respond with a series of mathematical symbols that roughly translated to unknown. More Kralax ships dropped from subspace, surrounding Axiom 9 like predators closing in on seemingly helpless prey. Their weapon systems charge, ready to reduce the station to atomic fragments. But the humans continued to sleep. Inside the station, a complex neural network was coming alive, not through conscious effort, but through a distributed intelligence that used sleep as its primary computational state. Each sleeping human was a node in a living, breathing tactical system. Private Marcus Chen, still in his sleep pod, began to emit a low-frequency signal. It wasn't communication as any species would understand it. It was something more. A quantum-level interaction with the station's systems that defied conventional understanding. The first wave of Kralax attack craft suddenly found their navigation systems compromised. Not destroyed. Not hacked. Simply reprogrammed. They began executing flight patterns that made no tactical sense, yet were mathematically perfect. Impossible, Zarek muttered. But impossibility was becoming the human standard operational mode. Lieutenant Sarah Rodriguez's brainwaves, monitored from her sleep pod, were creating interference patterns that disrupted quantum communication bands. She wasn't actively doing anything. She was simply existing in a state of neural complexity that was itself a weapon. The station's defensive systems began to activate, but not through traditional means. Nanotechnological interfaces emerged from seemingly random points, creating a defensive network that was more organic than mechanical. It adapted. It learned. It responded to threats before those threats could even be fully conceived. Zarek realized something fundamental in that moment. The humans weren't just defending themselves. They were teaching the universe a new definition of warfare. A definition where sleep was the most dangerous state of consciousness. Dr. Elena Rodriguez's laboratory looked like a cathedral dedicated to impossible science. Holographic displays danced with neural maps that defied every known principle of cognitive function. Her latest discovery would rewrite everything humanity understood about consciousness, stress, and survival. It's not just adaptation, she muttered to herself, fingers tracing complex neural pathway simulations. It's evolution in real time. The breakthrough came from an unlikely source, a simple sleep study that had been running for months, tracking human neural responses during extreme stress scenarios. But these weren't ordinary readings. These were quantum-level communications happening beneath the surface of consciousness. Human sleep, she realized, was not a passive state. It was an active, hyper-intelligent computational mode. When most species experienced stress, their neural networks would show increased activity in threat response regions. Humans did something entirely different. Their brains would enter what she called a distributed cognitive state, a mode where consciousness became a fluid, adaptive network. The primary neural map she'd been studying belonged to Private Marcus Chen. During what appeared to be deep sleep, His brain was performing calculations that would take supercomputers decades to complete. It wasn't just processing information. It was predicting, adapting, weaponizing. A notification interrupted her thoughts. The Galactic Confederation's Research Council wanted an immediate briefing. The presentation room was a marvel of xenotechnology. Representatives from 12 different species waited, their anticipation a tangible energy that made the air itself feel charged. "What we're seeing," Elena began, her holographic display showing complex neural networks, "is a form of consciousness that doesn't just respond to threats. It transforms them." She pulled up a series of comparisons. A Ventari brain under stress showed localized, panicked activity. A Carnock's neural map revealed fragmented, inefficient response patterns. But the human brain, it was a living, breathing quantum computer. During what appears to be sleep, the human brain enters a state of extreme neural plasticity, she explained. It's not just processing information. It's rewriting its own operating parameters in real time. The lithoid delegate, a being composed of living crystalline structures, began to fracture, a sign of profound emotional response for its species. Each sleep cycle, Elena continued, is actually a sophisticated threat assessment and optimization protocol. The more dangerous the environment, the more deeply humans seem to sleep. She demonstrated with a series of live neural maps, volcanic eruptions, extreme radiation, quantum-level disruptions. In each scenario, human subjects didn't just survive. They seemed to absorb the threat, converting environmental chaos into actionable intelligence. It's as if human consciousness has evolved to treat extreme stress not as a threat, she concluded, but as raw computational material. The room was silent. The implications were staggering. Humans weren't just another species adapting to the universe. They were a living, breathing computational system that could turn the very concept of danger into a strategic advantage. And they were just getting started. The Kralax Armada darkened the star system like a plague of metallic locusts. Thousands of warships converged on Axiom 9, their weapon systems charged with enough destructive potential to obliterate entire planetary networks. Commander Zarek believed this would be the moment of total victory. He was wrong. As the first wave of attack craft approached, the research station seemed impossibly calm. Most of its human personnel appeared to be in deep sleep. Alien observation teams watched in horrified fascination, expecting total annihilation. Instead, something extraordinary happened. The station's defensive systems didn't just activate. They evolved. Nanotechnological interfaces emerged from seemingly random points, creating a defensive network that was more organic than mechanical. It adapted. It learned. It responded to threats before those threats could even be fully conceived. Lieutenant Sarah Rodriguez, deep in her sleep pod, became the central processing node of this impossible defense. Her brainwaves created interference patterns that disrupted quantum communication bands across entire sectors of space. She wasn't actively doing anything. She was simply existing in a state of neural complexity that was itself a weapon. Quantum-level sensors detected something unprecedented. The sleeping humans weren't just defending the station. They were rewriting the fundamental physics of the engagement. Incoming Kralax missiles found their trajectories subtly altered. Not destroyed. Not intercepted. Simply redirected. As if the very fabric of space-time had been gently nudged by an intelligence so profound it appeared like passive resistance. Tactical anomaly, screamed the Kralax bridge crew. Their weapon systems showed impossible readings. Targeting computers went haywire. Navigation systems began executing flight patterns that made no tactical sense, yet were mathematically perfect. Private Marcus Chen's neural network became a living, breathing tactical computer. Each millisecond of the attack was being processed, analyzed, and transformed into a defensive strategy so complex it appeared like pure chance to outside observers. The station's AI struggled to describe what was happening. Computational mode unprecedented, it reported. threat response functioning at quantum computational levels beyond current scientific understanding. Entire squadrons of Kralax ships found themselves caught in impossible gravitational eddies. Communication bands collapsed. Weapon systems became self-targeting nightmares that threatened their own fleet more than the human station. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, monitoring the entire scenario, realized something profound. This wasn't just defense. This was a fundamental reimagining of warfare itself. The humans weren't fighting. They were sleeping. And in that sleep, they were more dangerous than any active military force in the known universe. The Kralax fleet began to disintegrate, not through conventional destruction, but through a systematic, mathematically perfect dismantling that seemed to happen by pure chance. One by one, their ships found themselves redirected, disabled, rendered completely non-functional. And the humans, they continued to sleep. The moment of absolute confrontation arrived like a quantum singularity of pure, concentrated chaos. Commander Zarek's flagship, the Obsidian Spine, represented the pinnacle of Kralax military engineering. 15 kilometers of weaponized nightmare, capable of reducing entire solar systems to atomic dust. Its primary weapon could shatter planetary cores. Its quantum communication network could coordinate attacks across multiple star systems simultaneously. And it was about to be defeated by sleeping humans. The bridge of the Obsidian Spine descended into pure existential terror. Tactical displays showed impossible scenarios. Their most advanced weapon systems were being systematically dismantled by what appeared to be pure statistical chance. Activate Final Protocol. Zarek screamed, mandibles clicking with a combination of rage and mounting panic. The ship's ultimate weapon charge, a graviton lance capable of creating localized black holes, enough destructive potential to erase entire sections of spacetime. On Axiom 9, the humans continued to sleep. Private Marcus Chen's neural network, now functioning as a distributed quantum computational system, began its most extraordinary performance. His brainwaves created interference patterns that went beyond simple defense. They were rewriting the fundamental mathematical language of destruction itself. The graviton lance fired, and nothing happened. Or, more precisely, everything happened simultaneously. The weapon's destructive potential didn't just fail. It fractured, multiplied, redirected into impossible geometric patterns that defied conventional physics. Where a single devastating beam should have emerged, thousands of quantum-entangled energy streams scattered across multiple dimensional planes. Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched from the station's primary observation deck, her neural interface capturing every microscopic detail of the impossible engagement. "They're not just defending," she whispered to herself. "They're teaching." Lieutenant Sarah Rodriguez's sleep pod became the epicenter of a quantum defensive matrix. Her brainwaves were creating a living, breathing computational system that was simultaneously analyzing, predicting, and neutralizing threats before they could fully manifest. The Kralax bridge crew watched in mounting horror as their most sophisticated weapon system began to disassemble itself, not through external intervention, but through a series of mathematically perfect self-destructions that seemed to emerge from the weapon's own internal logic. Zarek's tactical advisor, a cybernetic entity designed for instantaneous threat assessment, could only respond with a series of mathematical symbols that roughly translated to impossible. But impossibility was becoming the human standard operational mode. The graviton lance's energy began to fold in on itself. Instead of destroying, it was creating, generating complex neural-like networks of pure energy that danced between potential realities. Each potential destruction became a moment of creation. Each threat transformed into a possibility. Quantum entanglement at 987% theoretical maximum. The ship's AI reported, its voice carrying a note that might have been described as awe if it were capable of emotion. The humans weren't just surviving. They were rewriting the fundamental rules of engagement. Entire squadrons of Kralax ships found themselves caught in impossible gravitational eddies. Communication bands collapsed. Weapon systems became self-targeting nightmares that threatened their own fleet more than the human station. Marcus Chen's neural network was doing something extraordinary. It wasn't just defending. It was learning, evolving. The attack itself became raw computational material, transformed into a living, breathing strategic response. We are experiencing a complete system recalibration, the Obsidian Spine's AI announced, its voice devoid of emotion, but filled with an unmistakable sense of profound transformation. The sleeping humans had turned an entire invasion fleet into nothing more than a complex mathematical problem, a puzzle to be solved, a threat to be understood and ultimately neutralized. And they hadn't even opened their eyes. Commander Zarek realized in that moment that humanity represented something far beyond a mere species. They were a living, breathing computational system that could turn the very concept of danger into a strategic advantage. The universe would never be the same. The aftermath of the battle defied every known principle of warfare, scientific understanding, and cosmic logic. Where the Kralax Armada had once existed, 15,000 warships representing the most advanced military force in known space now remained only a mathematically perfect dispersal of atomic particles, not destroyed, not conquered, simply reorganized. The Galactic Confederation's Emergency Council convened in an emergency session that would be remembered for millennia. Representatives from 12 different species sat in stunned silence, watching the preliminary report from Axiom 9 Research Station. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood at the center of a holographic display that looked more like a living, breathing mathematical theorem than a traditional presentation. "What you're witnessing," she began, her voice calm and precise, "is not a military victory. It's an evolutionary demonstration." The hologram shifted, showing multiple layers of neural network interactions. Private Marcus Chen's brainwaves danced across dimensional planes, transforming the very concept of threat into pure computational potential. "The humans didn't fight," Elena continued. "They solved a problem while sleeping." The Karnock's representative, a being composed of 7 interconnected consciousness nodes, began to vibrate with what could only be described as technological law. Its 7 eye stalks focused with an intensity that suggested complete neural recalibration. Detailed analysis revealed the extraordinary truth. The human response to the Kralax invasion wasn't a military strategy. It was a complex, living computational system that treated warfare as a mathematical problem to be resolved. Lieutenant Sarah Rodriguez's neural patterns had effectively turned an entire invasion fleet into nothing more than a complex equation. Each incoming threat was not something to be destroyed, but something to be understood, transformed, resolved. They didn't just defend, the station's primary AI reported. They educated. The Kralax fleet hadn't been defeated. It had been systematically analyzed, understood, and ultimately redistributed across multiple quantum potential states. Not a single life was lost, not a single ship truly destroyed. They had simply been reorganized. Commander Zarek's flagship, the Obsidian Spine, now existed simultaneously as both a complete entity and a complex mathematical possibility. Its weapon systems, once the most sophisticated in known space, had been transformed into a living educational model about the nature of threat and response. Dr. Rodriguez's final slide showed something truly extraordinary. The visualization of human neural networks during the conflict revealed that the sleeping humans had been doing more than defending. They had been learning, evolving, expanding the very understanding of consciousness itself. "This is not a weapon," she explained to the stunned council. "This is an adaptive system, a living, breathing computational matrix that turns destruction into understanding." The implications were staggering. Humanity wasn't just another species in the galactic ecosystem. They were a fundamental re-understanding of how intelligence could function. Most species saw threats as things to be destroyed. Humans saw them as problems to be solved. And they did it best when they were asleep. 3 months after the incident, the galaxy had fundamentally changed. The Galactic Confederation's research facilities were overwhelmed with a single obsessive question. What exactly were humans? Dr. Elena Rodriguez sat in her private laboratory on Axiom 9, surrounded by holographic displays that mapped the extraordinary neural networks of her research subjects. Private Marcus Chen and Lieutenant Sarah Rodriguez, the two primary subjects of the groundbreaking study, continued to sleep, their brains performing computational miracles that defied every known scientific understanding. "They're not just a species," Elena muttered to herself, tracing the complex neural pathways. "They're a living computational system." The aftermath of the Kralax encounter had sent shockwaves through every known civilization. Diplomatic envoys from hundreds of planetary systems sought to understand the humans' extraordinary capabilities. What had appeared to be a simple defensive action was now recognized as something far more profound, a complete reimagining of intelligence itself. The Karnox Collective had already begun restructuring their entire educational systems. The Lithoid Confederacy was conducting emergency sessions to understand how a species could turn sleep into the most sophisticated defensive mechanism in galactic history. Commander Zarek, once the most feared military leader in the Kralax hierarchy, had been transformed. His flagship, the Obsidian Spine, now existed as a living research facility, a testament to human computational capabilities. Where once he sought conquest, he now sought understanding. Classified reports revealed something even more extraordinary. The humans hadn't just defended themselves. They had effectively taught the Kralax an entirely new way of perceiving conflict, threat, and resolution. "It's not about destruction," Elena's final report concluded. "It's about transformation." The neural networks of the sleeping humans continued their impossible dance. They were processing, learning, evolving, all while appearing completely unconscious. Each sleep cycle became a complex computational event that expanded the very understanding of consciousness. Alien researchers discovered that human sleep wasn't a vulnerable state. It was the most sophisticated threat assessment and problem-solving mechanism in the known universe. Political boundaries began to shift. Military strategies were rewritten. The entire concept of warfare was being reimagined through the lens of human neural complexity. And the humans, they continued to sleep. In research stations, on starships, in laboratories across multiple star systems, humans demonstrated an extraordinary truth. Their greatest weapon was their ability to turn the very concept of threat into an opportunity for understanding. The galaxy would never be the same. As the final rays of an alien sun cast long shadows across Axiom 9's research wing, Private Marcus Chen let out a soft snore. And somewhere, in the vast complexity of his sleeping mind, entire civilizations were being quietly, mathematically, perfectly resolved. The end.